This conference will now be recorded.
I'd like to call to order the regular May 1st, 2023 council meeting to order at 7 p.m. All rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, any additions or corrections to the agenda?
I have one correction.
Okay.
That's going to be the removal of the public hearing, adopt a resolution for supplemental budget.
Okay, that's number 6 on the agenda. Any other additions or corrections? If not, would anyone like to make a motion to accept the agenda with the one removal item? Okay.
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Webb. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Councilor Norman,
Aye.
Councilor Webb,
Aye.
Councilor Ash,
Aye.
Councilor Wagner,
Aye.
motion carried.
Okay, thank you. Moving right into presentations. Tonight we have a Columbia Pacific EDD, Columbia County Housing Implementation Plan presentation. So welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, I'm Paul Vogel with the Columbia Economic Team. We actually partnered with Columbia Pacific EDD on this study. And so I'm here to talk about it a little bit. And I'll be brief before I turn you over to the smarter people about this. As we were talking before the meeting, really there's 2 reasons that we undertook this study on behalf of the communities in the county. One is staring down the possibility of a project the size of Next Renewables in North County. That would be about a 3,000 person temporary workforce, which makes for a temporary, but 3 years is a long temporary housing issue for them, that size workforce. The other is the permanent housing for almost 250 people in North County or wherever they find housing. And we wanted to be at least conscious of and know something about the impacts that might happen. But about the same time, 2 things happened. One, I was a Zoom participant in one of your calls, and you all were wrestling with a bunch of residential housing, lot size, street vacation, street improvements, issues like that. And Suzette was talking about some of the other things that were in the queue and that you were dealing with. A couple days later, I'm talking with the city administrator in Columbia City, and they're trying to take on a look at some changes in ordinances and that sort of thing. So the thought occurred, if we're going to do this study, why don't we do it in a way that includes the smaller cities who aren't mandated to do housing needs analysis and implementation plans, and frankly aren't all staffed up to do it. Is there some way to use the state's money to do this work and to hopefully provide some resources and some tools to our 4 smaller cities, Vernonia being one of them? You know, partway through, and we had an advisory committee, city administrators were involved. We had a number of other folks involved from the industry, and partway through, I already started hearing about UGB actions here, and things are already starting to take place, Vernonia and all of that. So I'm thinking, oh, we better catch up. But in the end, through the various iterations and getting the input from all of the communities, hopefully what we've given you is a toolkit, not a mandate, certainly, obviously not a mandate, but a toolkit with researched alternatives, research strategies, analysis on limitations, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Some work that you didn't have to pay to do that's going to help you make decisions, help you have a conversation with your community. So that was our purpose in doing this, leveraging DLCD money. It's great to get something good out of DLCD. and use that to get some good research, some economic analysis, some great planning analysis, and offer it to the city as help as your community grows and you deal with those issues. So I'll turn it over to the consulting team from Cascadia, which has done a terrific job. Thank the city for agreeing to participate, Josette for her input and her participation, and hopefully you've got some tools here that will help carry you forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Hi there. My name is Jamin Kimmel. So I'm a planner and a partner with a firm called Cascadia Partners. So we're based out of Portland. We do a lot of this kind of housing planning across the state. And so glad to be here with you tonight. I think we're just going to do a brief kind of overview of what's included in the housing implementation plan and what kind of resources, ideas you might find in there. I think you have in front of you some of our slides that are just kind of a summary of the plan for the purpose of this presentation. There is a longer, fully written out document that has more detail on each of those strategies. The slide deck, so if you go ahead and go to the next slide, we'll start in. I think Paul pretty much covered this, but the impetus for this project was coming from COPAC and from the economic team, and the idea to look at both the short-term impact of the next project, but also what kinds of strategies could each of the cities, the smaller cities in each of these, the Columbia County area could start to implement to try to address some of your housing issues. And so again, both looking at the short-term, but also the long-term needs. I'm going to go to the next slide. Paul also covered this, that there's the next renewables project underway and likely to be approved in the future. But even if it is not approved, I think many of these concepts and recommendations in the housing implementation plan would remain relevant going forward. A lot of them are about addressing housing issues and housing needs, and regardless of kind of whether you have an influx of market demand. Go to the next slide. So this kind of covers what's included in the housing implementation plan and how it's organized. So it is long, 70-some pages, but there is an executive summary, so you can get down to the key points there. We discussed a little bit of what the county's key housing needs are in each of these cities as we see. So we took some different kind of analysis of housing affordability, overall housing supply, demographics. That should be useful for you as you start to think about the future housing in your community. And then we go into both some strategies to meet temporary housing needs and also to meet the permanent or long-term housing needs. And again, I'd emphasize that this is, because of we're working with 4 different jurisdictions here, we don't expect to get everything right or have everything be exactly something you want to take off the shelf and implement. We expect that this is kind of a toolbox and not necessarily a prescriptive plan. So you can move forward and decide how you'd like to implement it. Go to the next slide. So we started out, this is probably too far away to read from there, but looking at what the impact potentially of the next renewables project could be, and trying to actually kind of quantify that type of impact on the housing market across these 4 jurisdictions. And so the kind of high level results of that are many of those construction workers that will come in the first few years of construction are likely to be coming in actually in RVs. And so there will be an influx of probably demand for RV parking spaces. We think most of that will be near the Port Westford site in Clatskanie or Rainier. Maybe a few come all the way down to Vernonia, but we expect most of them will be closer to the site there. So more of an impact on those communities. Over the course of the construction, we expect about 1,200 or so, demand for about 1,200 rental or lodging units during that time frame, so temporary housing for construction workers that come not in an RV and they don't have a space to live for there. A portion of that will probably land in the county. Some of it will probably go to Cowlitz County. So we did some modeling of the workers who work in the area around the Port Westward today. Where do they commute from? So if you expected an influx of workers coming as part of this project, how would that distribute out? So based on that, we gave some kind of scenarios of what we could expect for additional housing market demand in each of the communities. And you can see in Vernonia, it's fairly small. So we don't expect a significant number of kind of new residents coming units, Vernonia. It's really on the scale of less than 10 to 20 or so. But that's the potential there related to the next site. But then we also looked at, given your population growth in the long term, then you layered on the new employment coming from the next site, how much more additional growth could you expect out of that? And so the range in there of the housing units that are projected to be needed over the next 20 years of 33 to 39 units. It's a very precise number, but really it's a range, and that's the 20-year housing forecast that could be associated with both your population growth, but also the next project. So it gives you a little sense of what the potential impact of the project will look like. The next slide. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but in the document, there's 18 different housing strategies that are organized into 5 different categories. And then we rate them based on their impact to different kinds of housing needs. So as you look at it, you can have some guidance to say, well, if this housing need at this income level is important to us, these are the kinds of strategies that work. There's also prioritize just based on what we expect their level of impact to be and how feasible they are to implement. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So a lot of guidance in there for you to kind of find the strategies that would make sense given the kind of housing needs you think are the top priority for Vernonia. Next slide. I tried to make the document just as easy to use as possible. So it's organized in a similar fashion for each strategy with a description of it, some implementation steps, and again, those prioritization. Go to the next slide. Just an example of how we prioritize. And so strategies are grouped into 3 categories based on their impact and feasibility. And so, for example, in the green category is immediate focus, which we see as projects that could have a fairly high impact on helping to deliver new housing units or new affordable housing units, but are fairly feasible to implement. So don't require a lot of new funding or staff time. And so those are ones that are kind of the lower hanging fruit. So there's different categories depending on how complex to implement or how high the impact is we expect to be of each of the strategies. Go to the next slide. So I mentioned the temporary strategies. These are less pertinent to Vernonia, but I think it's helping to give Colpack and the county some ideas for how they might respond to this influx of construction workforce associated with the next project. That can include things like dedicating some land for additional RV parking. They'll host some of those new RV construction workers who come in RVs, potentially providing some allowances for RVs or tiny homes on wheels to be used as on private land in cases where they are not allowed now. So we give some recommendations of how that could be done in a way that would not have the unintended consequences. Or even kind of trying to facilitate a development somewhere where the housing that's built is kind of modular or prefabricated housing that will be used for the construction workforce while they're here, but then when the construction workforce leaves, that can be used for permanent affordable housing long term. This is something that's actually been done in some other regions. And so that's another one of the strategy kind of ideas in that section. So let me go into some of the permanent strategies, and I'm going to cover a couple more of those, and I'm going to have Rachel from our team come up and finish up. And so financial incentives for housing development are always a tool. And so the two kind of big tools you have at your disposal for that are changes to your system development charge policies. So either providing, scaling them by the size of the unit, providing some exemption for certain housing types that you really want to incentivize. And then property tax abatements are another option to you. So there are state laws that allow you to provide an exemption on property taxes and the temporary exemption of up to 10 years for projects that have a public benefit. And so many cities across the state now are using that as an incentive for affordable housing projects. So for an incentive for a private developer to build affordable income restricted housing. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Rachel to take you through a few more of the strategies.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Rachel Cotton. I'm a senior associate at Cascadia Partners, and I've been a member of the team who's been working on this project. So next slide. We also included 4 land-based strategies. I don't think it would be news to anyone to know that land is often the most expensive part of development, not always, but is typically close to it. So strategies that allow leveraging land assets can be a powerful tool in terms of incentivizing housing development or facilitating housing development. So we have strategies recommending utilizing excess public land for housing when that's appropriate, assisting with land acquisition and land banking, forming partnerships with land trusts, and forming partnerships with institutional landowners such as faith-based organizations, churches, nonprofits. Oftentimes, those organizations, it aligns with their mission, something like affordable housing development, and they are privy to some specialized rules through the state in terms of being able to develop specific types of housing on their land and also not paying property taxes. So that can be a really powerful partnership within a community if there's interest in excess land to be used in that way. Next slide. We also identified a series of what we call public projects and resources. So urban renewal is a potential tool that can be used to support capital improvements and housing. Also recommended evaluating the feasibility of implementing a construction excise tax. In that case, that's a tax that is added to development that creates a dedicated funding source for typically income restricted housing. And an additional strategy to target infrastructure improvements, so things like sewer, water, utilities, roads, to know, kind of plan the capital improvements with an emphasis on identified sites for housing development. And I just want to reiterate what Jamin said. We recognize every community is unique and has its own kind of priorities and challenges. And so these are really meant to be generalized recommendations, and we really encourage additional outreach with the community, additional conversations with, between mayor and council and planning commission to fine tune these strategies in a way that will be effective within your community. And next slide. We also did kind of a light code audit to identify some zoning and regulatory strategies that we believe will be impactful in terms of needed housing development. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on these, but these include defining and allowing a wider range of housing types, updating allowances for manufactured housing to comply with state law. So there are some recent state legislation that requires, introduces some new requirements for manufactured dwelling parks, and also requires clear and objective standards for manufactured dwellings. Most communities, including Vernonia, have sort of like a boilerplate language in the code that is not clear and objective. So much of that to comply with the state regulations needs to be removed from code. We also recommend removing barriers to accessory dwelling units, reducing minimum lot sizes for key housing types, and adjusting, in some cases, minimum parking. Next slide. It'll just make a note on the slide. The version that you have in your packet is a little bit different than this slide. We did an additional review of the code. We may have reviewed maybe a legacy version, or you have updated your code since we did our initial. Is that what happened?
Well, we did some grammatical tweaks, but for the most part, the guts should have been the
It
same.
should have been the same. Okay, so we might have made an error, but I just want to state that this is a little bit different than what you are seeing in front of you. But all to say that we've identified a few things, namely the manufactured dwelling parks need to be allowed, not as a conditional use, but as an outright use in residential zones, allowing between 6 to 12 dwelling units per acre. So we're just kind of flagging that. In general, Vernonia has fairly permissive housing type allowances, so that's a good thing to see. Next slide. So specifically on the manufactured housing, as I mentioned, jurisdictions within UGBs, urban growth boundaries, must allow manufactured dwellings on all lots zoned for single-family residential uses. We do allow that according to your code, but also the manufactured dwelling parks are required to be allowed in zones that have a density range of 6 to 12 units per acre. The standards must be clear and objective. So things like, it should match the surrounding materials, or, kind of like mights and shoulds, those need to be removed and they need to be specific. And the standards cannot be anything additional to what's required for a single family house. So many communities are coming up, with this new requirement, and they're updating their codes accordingly. Next slide. And so in terms of minimum lot sizes, we are, and again, this is something where we recognize additional outreach is needed, additional conversations are needed, but we're recommending some slight reductions in minimum lot size. One for cottage housing. So your code right now says cottage housing developments can be allowed at the same density. So we're just kind of making a recommendation for a 15,000 square foot minimum lot size for cottage clusters. And you can control that density as it's controlled within the zone. For duplexes in the R zone, we're recommending a slightly smaller minimum lot size. So the same size lot currently that a single family home is required to have. And then in the GR zone, we're just recommending some slight reductions. As you add more units, if you require a lot more land, that makes it typically cost prohibitive to develop additional units. And so typically, things like a duplex or a triplex, if your minimum lot size requirements are not aligned with kind of the economics of development, then you typically do not see what we call missing middle housing. That can be really critical when you think about, first-time home buyers, seniors downsizing, looking for a more attainable, first home or purchase price. Those middle housing units can be a really great way to kind of meet that housing demand in a different format, but in a way that's compatible with the surrounding uses. Next slide. Parking regulations. So this is always a challenging conversation to have, but we took a look specifically at the renters in Vernonia and the vehicle ownership, and we found that renter households typically own fewer than 2 vehicles per household. So the requirement to necessitate 2 parking spaces per rental unit essentially means that you may be building parking instead of housing, right? And so in some cases, it may make sense to reduce those parking requirements to align better with the demographics of renter households in the community. We recognize, in some of the communities that you see on this list, the gap is wider. So Vernonia, it's a smaller gap, but we're just recommending, a recommended standard is 1.5 spaces per unit for multifamily housing. Next slide. And then we did an analysis on site suitability. So in Jamin's portion of the presentation, we're covering temporary housing. So that's really, as the next plant is built, and there are thousands of construction workers, Paul mentioned up to 3,000 at peak. They're estimating. We've identified sites that are suitable for temporary housing, so whether that's RV parking or those modular units, a series of sites there. And just want to mention in the plan, there is a full page version of these. These are very small maps, so I apologize for that. But if you really want to dig into where these are, we have a full size version in the plan. And then permanent housing sites, one of the pieces of feedback we heard, and we know you're pursuing a UGB swap because there really aren't a lot of sites in town to build on. So that is reflected in the site suitability analysis. Next slide. And finally, implementation. What happens with this plan now that it's been created? And I want to invite Paul up just to kind of important partner on the project, and we, our contract is ending, but we don't want the plan to just sit on the shelf. So we are in Colpack and Columbia County are recommending that each jurisdiction adopt the housing implementation plan by resolution. That will be led by city staff, but the county and Colpack are ongoing partners. And then turn over to Paul and just say a few things about kind of what happens next.
You can imagine, the recommendations in here for Vernonia are not the same for Columbia City, Rainier, Clatskanie. And so the idea of just sort of adopting it probably involves a lot more conversation and adapting to your own particular needs. That's your conversation. Those are local decisions. Something else that came out of this, and partially because we were looking at the temporary housing issues. Temporary housing also invokes camping, campgrounds. And by the way, we got the county to sponsor this, that would be the applicant for the study, as long as we did not look at unincorporated county housing. So we didn't do that, but it did lead us into conversations with the county about possible role in temporarily accommodating trailers, fifth wheels, RVs, campgrounds, that sort of thing, to assist with the impacts of a temporary workforce that is not going to be there. Commissioner Garrett's here now. We started getting into wildlife discussions about, well, if we focused on some county surplus lands or some potential park lands and actually did the infrastructure necessary, even if it's septic, we're getting water there and all of that, it becomes a campground for a period of 2 to 3 years. If we did those things in places where we want to have parks, and the county continues to develop that as a park and a campground and that sort of thing, how do we turn this into inertia to get other things done? There are many other pathways that we're looking at. The point being, we don't feel like this work is done. We like the fact that it's helped fund and spur activity and thinking in areas that we really hadn't been looking at as a county. and help support the community. So we've recommended to the county that we create a task force that carries this activity forward and looks at some of the overall themes. And they said, well, that's great. How are you going to pay for it? So we're going to try and pay for it the same way we did this. There are actually some new DLCD grant funds available. We were very fortunate to work with Cascadia as a consulting firm. DLCD, typically when they give you a grant, they also dictate who you're going to work with. These new funds may not do that, and it would be a different kind of consulting than Cascadia does. So we're going to try and get hold of some of those funds, put together a task force that really has more housing people, more building people, more construction people, development people, and other stakeholders who, now that they've seen a product that they can touch, they go, yeah, we'd participate. So we're going to try and carry that forward. It's incumbent on us to help come up with the funding. And we're hoping that to the degree that the city of Vernonia would like to be involved. No, Josette's got nothing else going on. Plenty of time for meetings, but if we structure it right, and I think this one's fairly low impact. We had advisory committee meetings about every couple of months and that sort of thing. Point being, we don't want to let it sit on the shelf. We want to continue the momentum. We want to use the leverage of potential impact to make some other things happen and continue to provide tools. So we're not trying to create meetings for anybody. We're going to try and do it as streamlined as possible, but we'd like to put this task force together so that there's also an entity that the city can come to and say, look, we need a partner on this, or we need to do that, or we need the support for this. So there's something there with the name of the county on it that'll be useful. So that's where we're going. No, we're not going to ask for the money. Maybe a small match, but we think that based on this work, the DLCD will probably assist us in carrying this forward and making something happen. So I don't think you want to ask me any questions. You may have questions from our subject matter experts, but just want to let you know that we don't want this to sit on the shelf. We hope it's useful to you, and we know we're going to make it useful countywide to get some more things done.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
We are growing a little bit. We're in the process of making changes, doing some UGB swap. Right at the fact, we're going to have a resolution, or an ordinance tonight for the work we've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years. So your information is probably a very good resource for us in the future. And so thank you for being here. Anybody else have any questions? I do have one question for Paul and Casey, though. How is the biodiesel plant coming along as far as the stage of permitting? It's been going on for about 4 years now, if I remember right. And is it getting close to becoming a reality?
I would defer to the highest elected official.
It is with the Corps of Engineers environmental impact statement. So I defer to Paul a little bit on that timeline, as that's out of our realm. We do have a revised submittal for part of the application, a very small part of their railroad improvements they want to make was appealed. So revised plans are coming in for the county to go through our land use process again. But the big bulk of it, in my mind, county land use, the major part of it has been through with a small revision to the application for the rail portion.
Oh, good.
But Corps of Engineers is working on the environmental impacts statement, and then I believe DEQ water permit follows that. And I'm told less than a year
Oh,
to get through that, which I think the company wanted to start a year or so ago. And I don't know what the number is. At one point, I think I heard $50 million into it with a shovel in the ground. So they're heavily invested, and we're optimistic.
Just a little supplement. I probably put him in a position of commenting on something you might have to make another land use decision on.
Yeah.
Sorry. He's got that right. The Corps of Engineers is being a little cantankerous with its EIS. They're kind of going overboard and dragging this thing out, but it is underway. The company's being very responsive. There is a 401 water certification that has to be filed for again by the company. It's a DEQ measure. And it's been denied without prejudice twice because DEQ wanted to see, well, first they wanted to wait and see if there was going to be an EIS. Then they wanted to see the draft. So why file it now when the EIS isn't drafted yet? So that will be time. I think they're expecting to be able to do that in fall of this year. And in the meantime, they actually formed a special acquisition company and have brought in a partner. United Airlines has invested a little over $50 million to make aircraft, renewable aircraft fuel. So that is an additional private investment that comes in and makes this even more viable. But if you look at it, it really just is a development project right now. So 2 weeks ago, I think Friday, they announced the acquisition of a renewable fuel facility in Lakeview, Oregon. That is wood waste it was intended to turn it into aircraft fuel. Problem was they got it to the gas state, so they could never get it to the liquid state. And so it never commercially operated. And Next Renewables has purchased that plant, and they're going to process this wood waste, but they're only going to go so far as the natural gas state, and they will pipe that 2 miles to the Ruby pipeline, putting renewable gas into the transmission pipeline. Creates a little bit of revenue flow, but as much as anything, it actually takes them from being just a development project to actually having an asset and a balance sheet, which is good for their fiscal stability. So things are progressing. The Corps of Engineers are telling them what to do. They kind of hold the pen. A lot of work going on there. They hoped for it to be this year. They're looking now at early to mid 24 for the EPC submission agreement. So maybe that's more information than you wanted, but we're pretty careful.
Yeah, it's still going to provide 1,200 jobs, give or take.
250 permanent jobs.
250. Okay.
A lot of allied businesses around it. So I think the multiplier is probably 3 to 4 times that.
Okay.
And the construction jobs won't be 3,000 all at once, but at peak, or for a long time, but at peak it would be about 2,900, 3,000 jobs, trades, and that sort of. So significant economic impact, but also some impacts we're all going to have to deal with. So.
Yeah. Anybody have any other questions for Cascade? Susan?
So in the spirit of transparency, my day job is working in affordable housing and preservation throughout all 3 counties. That's Columbia and Sonoma counties. I work for Community Action Team. So you talked about having something that doesn't just sit on the shelf. And I was wondering if you had looked at any of the housing studies that have already been done throughout probably the past 10 years, specifically as it relates to Columbia County, and incorporated any of that information in here, or that as part of your just looking at how realistic this is. And I understand you're trying to make something that is countywide. And that's pretty difficult because Vernonia is kind of stuck in the middle with not a lot of benefit from something like the next project. We'd like it to. I think the ultimate would be some of the people working there permanently would probably end up here. I think you're right. There is so much need as it relates to rehabilitation. I'm looking at you get funding for this, or you do it this way or that way. And I'm thinking there's a lot of competition for that money that really needs to be looked at. And so I'm just curious about some of your additional research in this.
Yeah, so we did look at there was a 2017 study, I think, done, and we did look at that a bit, and that I think was also in partnership with St. Helens and Scappoose as well, I think, and so we were kind of took that with a grain of salt because it was a little bit broader and there's a little bit different kinds of communities than the smaller communities we were asked to look at. I think the issues around you're mentioning about kind of like I think you were getting at, it's like how does a smaller city access like funding for the city itself or a project that wanted to come to the city access funding for affordable housing?
Well, we're pretty adept at that. But my concern is more competition that then occurs, that if there is if there's more interest and more need, are the organizations that are boots on the ground and doing things like the affordable housing preservation, are funds, I'm just concerned about funds being drawn away from a real need. I won't call it the real need, but a real need versus something that is potentially not going to serve the community members. And I'm not just talking about Vernonia, it's all the small counties and all the small towns and all the small jurisdictions. There's a lot of us out there.
Yeah, I think if I understand your question correctly, I think the strategies that we identified in there, and some of them have to do with accessing funding sources, aren't particular to serving the workforce related to Next or to new residents in general. Those could be applied to development that would serve your existing residents just as well. And so I don't think it's the intent, I guess, was not for this to be a strategy that meets the needs of the Next employees and their housing needs. We were just looking at, well, if there's going to be an impact from that, particularly in the short term, what might that mean? It's the impact in the longer term is really much greater in the Clatskanie and Rainier area. And the question for them really was, would this maybe portend that we would be eligible for like an urban growth boundary expansion in the future where we may have thought we weren't before? And so in some cases, the answer is maybe. It was a little bit different for you. So I want to mischaracterize that it is all about the Next project. Per se, I think there's a lot in there that could be applied towards housing development that would serve existing residents.
I'd be interested in seeing the full presentation with all the details, because there's a lot of interesting things you've brought up, and I'd like to see how potentially they could be applied in a community like Vernonia, that's never been successful with land trusts or banking, and that's an urban thing. And it's very challenging to do it. And we've talked about, the cottage clusters have come up. That's part of the housing study that was done in 2017. And there were several meetings that really specifically talked about communities like Vernonia. And so I appreciate this. It kind of puts it all in one space, but I'd really like to know more about how maybe with changing laws and the governor's new mandate that we put 32,000 new homes in play or units in play, that maybe there is something that could benefit Vernonia. I'd like to see that.
Yeah, I think there definitely is more funding for local governments and small governments to implement these kind of things. It's still challenging, one, for getting the funding and then any kind of funding, outside of just your general municipal services that you had to provide, right?
Right.
But also the staff time too. And so that's one thing we identified in there as a separate whole strategy of, is there ways you can think about increasing capacity of your local staff or working with the county to keep the ball rolling on some of these things. Yeah. And that's also why we use that kind of prioritization. We try to get out, okay, what are the things that are more feasible to do in the shorter term and that have an impact versus these things would be great, but yeah, they're complex and take some time.
Yeah. And there are organizations that do step in to help with, like Colpac and Community Action Team. That's kind of been our roles traditionally. So thank you. I appreciate this. That was the end of my questions.
Just one brief comment here. Listening to this, I know when they put in the natural gas pipeline over in the Clascanine area, from, I think, missed over there a few years ago. And then with Intel, their big expansions, we have drawn quite a bit of long-term people into our park system, long-term stays, and it's really helped us considerably. We're looking at developing a new campground right now down by the lake. If this project in Clascanine goes, that might change some of our thinking of what infrastructure we put in and maybe even making something bigger.
Yeah.
We drew a lot of people over here.
Would that be a city park?
Yeah.
So currently Anderson Park allows for extended stay. If they have a job and a note from the employer, they can stay there. We've had some residents stay there 2 years in an RV.
But we're also looking at possibly a new campground. We have
Yes.
some capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully some of the information in there is helpful for that. We tried to get an estimate of kind of how many workers we think they actually come this far. I'm not sure exactly, but there are upwards of 500 to 600 are expected to come in RVs. Need somewhere to go.
When you can provide them a place to stay next to a flowing river or next to a lake, it's a draw.
They may drive with a few.
I've talked to a lot of those people and they're like, oh, we love it out here. And they don't want to be in the valley. And I think there wasn't a lot of places around Clascanine to go. So
Yeah.
I think they changed some laws where they can do on site now. Those big developments to put in like a trailer park,
Right.
temporary trailer parks, but I think people want to live where they're working either. So
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a comment.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you guys could send us the big one, we can print full interest.
Oh, sure, yeah, the draft.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And Paul, thank you for being here. And a lot of useful information, and we'll look forward to the task force getting a hold of you.
Are you volunteering?
No. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I do not have a mayor's report tonight, so moving into council committee meeting reports.
Just me.
I have one from last month.
You want to do yours?
I could do mine.
Go ahead.
Yeah. April meeting at the Vernonia Senior Center board meeting. It was April 14th. I didn't get a chance to bring it to the last council. Pretty good meeting. The income at the Bargains, Bridge Street's up. See, we served 628 meals last month, which is quite a few. They raised the income, or the rentals are up at the cabin. It's $275 for half a day for rental and then $575 per day for the whole day. Let's see. There was a crack in the oven door that just happened, and I brought it to Josette's attention. And there's still problems with the gutters leaking on that one side next to the generator. So anyway, I brought that to the attention of Josette, and good meeting. Basically, next one's May. So that's all I have from the seniors. Yeah.
So attended the Public Works meeting. We talked about the public work standards that we have. I've had discussions with Josette. I think Sheila was going to come in, and
She hasn't yet, but
she hasn't yet. Might have to prompt her. Just looking at, is there any need for any updated? Some of the stuff that's in the current ones are dated, but I think our engineering firm's actually in the process of providing new schematics, so that might solve some of it. But just kind of cursory look at, there's things that stand out, maybe. And Sheila kind of came from that type of background, so what she used to do in her job. So we also looked at the streets report. Pretty sure we're going to put in for a small city allotment grant this year for paving. It's up to $250,000 this year, potentially we could get. The discussion was around what streets should get it next. We have, with our street surveys we've been doing, we have poor and marginal streets still on our list. And with that kind of money, we can do them all. With the exception of East Street, because we're going to do some construction in it potentially. So that's will be a major accomplishment in town, of all of our poor and marginal streets finally being brought up. Of course, there are streets that are degrading by the day, so don't get too excited. So anyhow, that's what we're talking about doing there. Michael Calhoun brought up, we used to mark our storm drains that drain to the river. Actually, most storm drains drain to the river one way or another, but some more directly. And provided for you there is, this is actually can be a stainless steel round item, and then you can select your color, what you want. That's one idea. Basically the committee wanted permission from council to further flesh this out. One would probably be to get Ben to do a storm drain map for locations of the catch basins and it's more involved than we first thought. It's all over town if you really think about it. Maybe these here, what did you say, Stephanie? We figured it'd be about $200 for 20 to go this route. Michael's already got 20 of them that he purchased himself. Just needs the glue to epoxy them down. So we might do a demo in downtown with those nice ones. We might resurrect the stencil and the paint idea again. I don't know, Maggie has.
Maggie, yeah.
Anyhow, they just wanted the blessing to explore this idea further and bring back a recommendation to council. Everybody on board? All right.
I am.
Councilor Norman?
Well, I think the stencils are going to be easier to maintain than going back and gluing these down or somebody ripping them up.
Yeah, like I said, he's got those 20. We might do those for a demo and see how.
Do those 20 for a demo.
They might work and they may not. And strategically placing them is probably going to be the key. Or if somebody thinks they're a nice souvenir, well, then they might disappear.
You're thinking a car park's wrong on it and epoxy pops or snowplow. There might be some ways we'd be damaging these stainless steel medallions.
One idea was gluing them on the top of the curb, right in the center of the storm drain.
That's one option too.
So anyhow,
I think you have
throw them that bone and let them come up with the ideas, bring it back to us.
Mhm.
Okay, I think that's it.
Thank you, Dale. Okay, topics on the floor. None. Yeah. Okay.
Appropriate time or, I'm going to talk about the resolution.
Oh, that would be typical, unless you're trying to get out of here.
Nope.
If it's,
in the morning.
yeah, so if it's an item on the agenda, we typically have people do it during that part of the agenda, which is actually coming up pretty quickly.
Okay,
If that's okay with you guys.
okay.
And then on your way out, if you guys could sign a form for me, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Well, it was already, I mean, we already had it on the agenda in case you actually, Commissioner Garrett called me today
Yes.
and asked, okay,
If somebody wants to discuss from the floor, I request them to fill out a form.
okay.
It's not a big deal. It's just something for my record.
Okay,
Do we need to fill out?
okay.
You're with the committee.
We'll move on then. Consent agenda for accept.
Sorry.
Library board meeting minutes for March 2023.
I move to approve the consent agenda for acceptance.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been seconded. Call the roll, please, Stephanie.
Counselor Wagner,
Aye.
Counselor Ash. Aye. Counselor Webb. Mayor Hilbert,
Aye.
Counselor Norman,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you. Consent agenda for approval, city council meeting minutes for March 20th, 2023. City council meeting minutes for March 29th, 2023. City council meeting minutes for April 3rd, 2023. And city council meeting minutes for April 17th, 2023.
I'll move
Oh,
to approve the consent agenda for approval.
so moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Ash. Would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Norman,
Aye.
Counselor Ash, Counselor Webb.
Aye.
Mayor Hilbert,
Aye.
Counselor Wagner.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, moving on to unfinished business, staff report, priority list edition. Can be found on page 19.
This is pretty simple. It's from me just solidifying the consensus you guys can do at the priority work session to add the lake leak issue into the top 10 of the priorities. So if someone wants to make a motion, we'll add that formally and go to your next agenda item.
I bet Dale will make that motion.
Yeah, I'll move that we form, oh, excuse me.
Go ahead.
I move we formally add the Vernonia lake leak issue to the council priority list in the top 10 of listed items.
So moved. Is there a second?
I will second.
Counselor Ash, seconded. Call the roll, please, Stephanie.
Wagner,
Aye.
Counselor Norman,
Aye.
Mayor Hilbert,
Aye.
Ash.
Aye.
Counselor Webb. Motion carried.
Thank you. New business, open air market request, page 20. Everybody had a chance to look at the application from May 20th through September 30th.
And we have had a couple of food truck vendors sign vendor agreements, and I told them they need to coordinate on Saturdays with Open Air Market collaboratively, so it won't be someone blocking their site to their vendors or anything.
Okay. I see the yellow paint on the
Yeah,
painted now finally. So,
I was going to say that I
Yeah.
noticed it very brightly shining as
Yeah.
I drove in, and I am very, very pleased. Thank whoever did that.
could they use a little weed eating, but other than that, it looks pretty good.
it's on Tim's list.
Okay.
He was trying to get all the sports fields for the kids dealt with so that they'll move to the open space after, you know.
Okay, any discussions on this application?
It doesn't seem to specify where it is. I know we all know where it is, but is that a concern? To approving the permit? It literally
It does.
It actually does,
Oh,
I think.
No,
no, it just says that.
That says fence at Old Health Center lot.
That's the sign or
Oh.
banner should be
Yeah.
placed.
Yeah,
I
so
want them to show up
Health Center lot.
at Anderson and be like, hey, we have a permit.
Yeah, no, it's the Old Health Center lot.
Maybe we need to have other line on the form.
Yeah, or,
Mhm.
Yeah.
yeah, I'll just write it in under Spencer Park, Old Health Center lot, and then I'll exit like Brett did it.
Or, I mean, I think what Susan's saying is
Yeah, put
for
another.
future, just put other with a line so they're
Yeah.
prompted,
Sure,
oh, I should write what I want if it's not
got it.
a checkbox. That was my
Okay.
only question.
Anything else? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to accept the application for the open air market.
So move, Mr. Mayor.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
second.
Thank you. Counselor Norman, would you call a roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Ash,
Aye.
Counselor Norman,
Aye.
Counselor Wagner.
Aye.
Counselor Webb.
Aye.
Mayor Hobart.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, staff report, request to adopt resolution supporting the sheriff's levy. And I think we have,
Yeah, so Mayor Hobart and Counselor Webb received the request to adopt this resolution. And so it's before you to discuss whether or not you'd like staff to put it on your agenda for adoption. Now- Guys, or
yeah,
Commissioner Garrett.
I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Garrett right now, and he could describe the resolution and what you're presenting tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Mayor and Council. So Measure 5290, it's an enhanced law enforcement levy. It's 29 cents per thousand. For simple math, that would be assessed $400,000 house, around $10 a month, about $120 a year, a little less. It is a levy ask. So I know these things are always tough to ask for more money. I think we live in unprecedented times. We've had a strong uptick in property crimes and people crimes. The state has made it harder, basically impossible to prosecute on drug crimes or drug use, but that has created increased activity we've seen with drug have increased property crimes and people crimes, and there's data to support that right here in Columbia County. This would take us from 8 full-time patrol deputies to add 7 more, so nearly double our patrol presence around the county. First off, sorry, I'd like to say that Sheriff Bixley would have been here. He's in Rainier doing the same thing right now, and he actually just got done about a half hour ago. So he might have made it work, but we weren't sure on timing. So he apologizes for not being here. The concept behind this is, and there's some flexibility in it, depending on how it all goes, but it would be in North County, South County, and the Nehalem Valley. I don't know if that's been presented to the council. There's a letter from, I believe it went to you, Mayor Hobart, a letter from the sheriff describing his strategy there, to a countywide approach, but emphasis specifically on the Nehalem Valley. Currently, we have 18 hours of active patrol coverage around the county, so 6 hours of the night with 0. Those deputies have to get out of bed and respond to service after they get dressed, get in their car, and take off. So a real lack of service for 6 hours out of the night. This would put a minimum of 2 at that latest point of the night, instead of 0, up to 5 during shift changes, put us at 4 during swing shift hours. And it, like I said, it basically doubles our enforcement, but also provides the 24/7 coverage that we currently don't have. I think we all could recognize that crime outside of cities trickles in, oftentimes comes into the cities. So enhanced enforcement, I'm a believer, will help deter crime, help response times outside of your city perimeter, but also provide service inside the city and backup coverage inside the city that's currently hard to provide. I will acknowledge that there was an effort to have a contract with the city to provide sheriff's deputy presence. It didn't quite work out. There's a lot of examples of the county. We just spoke of one today of the county being good partners with the city of Vernonia. They don't always work out on the first stab, but this particular effort, I do strongly believe will help our overall problem. And it's something we really have to get ahead of and be proactive about. So it's just going to get tougher and tougher for us with the things that are happening in the world and right next door to us. We've went to the city of Scappoose, city of Clatskanie, city of Rainier. All three of those have adopted resolutions of support. And city of St. Helens is on Wednesday. Given the extenuating circumstances that we're in this day and age, that is why we're really looking for solidarity throughout our county, including our cities, and a commitment to help provide that support that I don't believe you guys have gotten enough of. You guys all know that. You're up here in Vernonia. It's one of the harder areas to cover, but this is a commitment from the sheriff. It's a 4-year levy for him to prove it out that it's a worthwhile service. And if he does so, then another opportunity after that for if times change, hey, if next renewables goes through, there's some things that could happen that could put us in a spot where maybe this isn't as important. But right now, July 1st, it's not like the floodgates are going to open, but it's just another example with the new homeless rules on ways to deal with that. Being homeless isn't a crime, but there's plenty of criminal activity that comes from that reality. I think all of us know somebody that's had a catalytic converter stolen, and crime inside and outside of our cities, and not enough presence and ability for that support from our sheriff's department. The county is in a position that, as always, we struggle every year, just like all the cities do, to balance a budget. We've invested over the last several years in trying to add to our capacity. And we've done so, but that definitely has limitations. This is a fairly drastic effort to make a big improvement and a pretty conservative ask at 29 cents per thousand comparatively to a lot of the tax asks, the levy asks and bond measures that we all get to deal with. So I appreciate your guys' consideration and would really appreciate your support for this effort. There's another couple folks, I'm not sure how your guys' public comment. I know that Mike Peel and Rob Curl and I had spoke in the past about the same need, and they said they would come up and have a word to say if you guys would allow as well.
Sure will. Thank you,
I
Casey.
appreciate it.
So
Any questions, I'd be
I
happy.
have a question. So when our local fire department's also going for a levy, and they discussed at their meeting that we're entering into compression.
Yep.
And so what does that mean for what you will really get?
We factored in compression what they asked
Okay.
with our assessor's office to be able to ensure that we would still, with the reasonable figures, the assessors of the approach,
Yeah.
the county assessors have factored in compression to ensure that we could have the level of funding for 7 deputies plus all necessary equipment.
But do you get what I'm saying? If that levy, if the people vote for that, does that make sense? Not, everyone's not going to get what they need ultimately.
So these all
Yeah.
add up, and the book on how compression works,
Yeah.
I don't know if you've reviewed it or you.
No, I
It's
just,
a complicated book.
yes.
So it goes, and I can't remember how many, whether they're districts or zones, it's divvied up in a surprisingly complicated way. So compression isn't, it's not a countywide or a Vernonia-wide impact. It's one spot at a time how that all works.
Yeah.
So, the assessors have factored in a reasonable adjustment for compression
Okay.
to accommodate.
Okay.
Yes.
Both levies, and you mean,
No, just, they'll just look at theirs. Yeah.
Whenever a levy is asked, so they can only do it's tricky business, and it took me about an hour to try to wrap my head around it to make sure that we felt comfortable.
Yeah.
And they assured me that it's a reasonable estimate. And there's a slight buffer. First of all, the first year, you're not going to get 7 deputies immediately. The sheriff does have an advantage of a jail that he can recruit from that has deputies within the jail that aren't patrol deputies that have desire to become patrol deputies. So he can expedite quite a bit of recruitment from there. But as we all know, it takes time to, once you have the funding available and recruit, it does take some time. So there's some buffer built into the 4 years in that way as well.
Casey, you mentioned July 1st change in a House bill for homelessness. What's that about?
House Bill 3115, and I cannot give you the ORSs that were created out of that off the top of my head. Its basis was off of the Boise, Idaho Supreme Court decision and the Grants Pass Supreme Court decision that made it a lot harder to tell homeless folks that they couldn't sleep or stay warm or stay dry on public property. Grants Pass, I think, made it the main thing that came out of that decision was you have to be very careful on how you remove folks from public property. And then you can't necessarily say you can't have a tent on public property without providing some reasonable alternative. And so that some cities are deciding to deal with that. If you want to have the authority to remove somebody from a sidewalk or from a public park or something like that, you have to have a reasonable alternative for them to go and seek out space to stay warm and dry. So it's not that cut and dry. It's very tricky business here that we're all having to deal with. And then there's current legislation to double down, and I believe it's called the right to shelter. It's another one on top of this. It gets even more specific about saying you can't get time limitations in public spaces. The county is responding with an ordinance that will not create dedicated spaces, but it's very specific about public health standards, safety standards, right-of-way standards. Just with these bills currently doesn't mean that you can go and occupy a space that the public has to pay for. So like our paid public campgrounds, those are pay for service campgrounds. Doesn't mean if somebody wants to walk into a space that they're still allowed to walk in. So we essentially charge for parking, and we charge for hookup fees and charge for sites. So these are complicated, challenging times that we're all going to have to deal with one way or another. I think it's going to try to take a little more of a case-by-case approach and feel it out for a while. But every city, every area is going to have its own challenges with it. But I will say, with a lot of those activities, there is a reality that criminal activity increases as well with that stuff. So it's still, even if those activities are legal and harder to deal with, it doesn't make it okay to steal. It doesn't make it okay to litter. It doesn't make it okay to do a lot of things that come with those activities. And the more we can try to keep things clean and stay on top of this challenging world, I think the better. Some similar things we've done. We've added a whole new fund and a contract with the towing company. It's not a ton of money, but about $30,000 a year to remove RVs and right-of-ways. And I guarantee if we haven't done that, we've probably removed close to 30 of them in less than 2 years, so they don't build up. I'm a big believer in the broken window theory. If we want to keep things as clean as possible to keep on top of this and enhance law enforcement patrol, that alone, I believe, will deter crime not only outside of city limits, but inside of city limits. So it's a proactive approach. It's also reactive. We got a lot of work cut out for us to keep up on this, and it's probably going to get harder.
Yeah.
So Casey and I had a discussion earlier on the phone. Rough back of the envelope calculations on my part, it looked like City of Vernonia would be pitching in about 47 grand on this tax, but 47J school district, which we kind of consider is in the Halem Valley, but not all of it. The total, including the city in that, would be about around $197,000. So with that being said, and what we're currently paying, Vernonia's rub, Casey, and I'll just be right out front, is we feel a lot of times we don't get what we're paying for. You know, the office is over there. It's easy for them to get hung up on Highway 30. I'm sure there's plenty of calls to go to. It's hard to get over here. And so we had a conversation for myself. It's to fund something like this. It's really there's got to be some commitment to this side of the hill.
Like I said, there is a commitment in writing. I'm not sure if that's been shared, but a commitment that Nehalem Valley is essentially a zone that's being established, and an acknowledgement that there needs to be more service out here. We've also looked at, and isn't off the table, we're still working on trying to create a half-time parking deputy position to go in between parks. It would actually be actual deputy, not a parks ranger. And you know, that's not part of this levy, but that's another effort. We've added a chief medical examiner that comes out of the general fund to help free up deputies from having to deal with examining, fatalities and all the stuff that comes up with that. So the general fund is now supporting a full-time chief medical examiner for the first time ever. Little things we've, like I said, the RV thing that helps the entire county. Animal control, we have added another position to animal control. It's a law enforcement function that's under the law enforcement umbrella that provides service. So I'm with you. There's all sorts of ways that it feels like we should be getting more service countywide, not for law enforcement. But the exact allocations for these things they're always a little more complicated than what you see on the surface. Our general fund supports the jail, even though we have a jail levy. Our general fund supports a portion of just about everything, even if there's other funds that go into it. So the commitment's there to make a difference because it's recognized that it's needed. But that's like I said, that's something that the sheriff I put my neck out there for this thing. I'll be personally committed to doing everything I can, and would like to work with you guys to make sure that's happening, so I can hold the sheriff's feet to the fire as well on making sure that he follows through with his commitment.
Thank you, Casey.
Thank you.
Mike?
I'll make it short and sweet because I know it's late. So basically we have some challenging, changing times. I don't like to spend money on unnecessary things, but we need to take care of business. I'd like to see the city council support a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Rob?
I don't know if I can do that short. I'll try, but I think we heard everything that Casey said, and that's what we want to hear. And thanks for your comment, Dale, because that's on my mind. I think it's on all of our minds, but I don't think it's that big of an investment to give Casey a shot either. I mean, look at the numbers, and $10 a month. And we know we have county sheriffs rolling around. I mean, just presence itself is as effective as you can ask for, besides, pulling a gun out. We can stop the 8 to 10 motorcycles and as a gang, so to speak, on Sundays and Saturdays doing 120 miles an hour on Scappoose Vernonia Highway just with a rolling sheriff. I mean, everyone's got examples of how reckless the traffic is, 47, wherever, if he's rolling around, it's a no-brainer for me. So Casey said it, he's gonna be accountable for this. We have to give him a shot. Let him burn his own bridge. That's how I see it. Give him a shot and let's see what happens. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I personally have been giving this a lot of thought through email from Casey and Sheriff Biskley and just, I have two son-in-laws that are in law enforcement and so I know what their job is like. I know basically, if you look at the whole picture, our nation has a drug problem, period. No getting around it. 85% of the people that are homeless are drug addicted. And So, I've been tossing this back and forth. You throw as many law enforcement, and it still doesn't solve the problem, the real issue of the drug problem. And until you start enforcing laws again and, stop decriminalizing hard drugs and marijuana, and you're not going to get anywhere. But one thing Rob just said, and I talked to Sergeant Carnahan today, presence is a lot, everything, almost everything. And so the more I think about it, the more, how are we going to change the district attorneys? How are we going to change the laws? I mean, it just seems like it's insurmountable to do that. So I'm kind of shifting more back towards the more officers we have, the better. We're not going to solve all the problems, but it might make a difference in somebody saving one life. So I've kind of changed my mind. I might support this resolution. Go ahead.
She's first.
So I do not feel positively for several reasons about passing a resolution on this. One is that only a few months ago, we had to exit early a contract with the county. And I think the reasons we chose to do that really conflict with me in telling our community that we are encouraging them to vote for this. I don't feel it's my role as a city councilor to tell people how to vote really about anything. That's kind of their job to decide that. I also spent about 5 hours last week with a county deputy, and the amount of comments made that he made it sound to a group of people as if we don't have local law enforcement, or that we shouldn't expect them to be helping us. It's the county that's doing it. And what we see, I think personally, is the opposite. So it kind of felt it really rubbed me a certain way. And I think also, I know it's easy to say, oh, it's $10 a month, but we have, the cost of everything right now is incredible. And we have multiple levies coming before our voters. And if we pass a resolution supporting this levy and don't pass one for our own fire department, I think that's putting a risk at which one's going to get voted for if people aren't going to vote for all of them. And I would personally much rather see funds going to our local resources than county resources, because distance to me is everything. They're here, they're what we have, they're who's taking the majority of the calls. So that's how I feel.
Susan.
Thanks for stealing all of my comments.
Sorry, got it.
So I agree. There's a couple of things I'd like to say. As a citizen, absolutely, you can make that choice as to whether or not you want to vote for this or not. I, particularly with the summary that's been provided for us, that we have never, as a city council, adopted a resolution supporting any levy, I think that it would be a bad precedent to set. In addition, as Councilor Ash pointed out, is the fire department levy, which again is much more directed to us, and we know what services we're going to get through that. And the $47,000 that Dale has back of the napkin calculated, if we were going to ask our citizens to pay approximately $47,000, I think it should be done for our community that's being served. Another thing is we have a lot of citizens, and granted, they would not have necessarily a $400,000 home, But their citizens, many of our citizens are very, very low income and very low income. $678 a month is what they bring in through Social Security. Tasking them with adding $5 a month is unconscionable. They can't afford food. They have to make a decision between medication and food, or medication and rent, or their mortgage. Do they pay their insurance? I mean, there's so many things that they have to make decisions on. $5 a month is a huge chunk of change for them. And I do not feel that it's appropriate for us as a city council to be making a decision as to whether to support this levy or not.
Casey, what are the zones again in this resolution?
North County, South County, and the Halem Valley.
So 3 zones?
3 zones of areas of focus is the way he's described his.
And so you have 8 now, you're going to add 7, so you possibly will have 15 deputies.
15 total deputies.
How many deputies from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. will have coverage in those 3 zones?
A minimum of 2, and it's not set in stone. He says that most of the calls currently come in swing shift hours, so that's where he would start with providing the most patrol. But he said that it's tentative on the numbers between shifts, but then up to 5 between shifts because they have crossover between shifts. So during that 6 hours, I can't tell you how much crossover, but there's crossover between the shifts and overlap. I believe it's an hour overlap between the shifts. And I will say, and I respect your guys' points you're making, but I will say this absolutely is intended to provide support inside the city. All it takes is one incident, and if you have 2 city police officers, there's all your resources there. I mean, there's all sorts of terrible things that can happen where 1 or 2 officers is not enough support, and all sorts of times where a city officer could be involved in something simple and another call comes in, having additional law enforcement available, in my mind, that is a city service.
Your point. So you're saying that if we don't do this, we're not getting covered?
But there's a reality. The reality. If we only have so many deputies to provide support around the county, there's a lot less likelihood that you'll have that support when you need it. This won't take care of every single possible problem that happens. That'd be unrealistic. We probably wouldn't want that level of law enforcement at a certain point. That would be too much, but there is no picture perfect solution. But I will confidently say, and like I said, it was something that I'm committed to ensuring that promise is followed through, that we will have an enhanced service. And you know, your school district around the city of Vernonia. I grew up in Chapman. I was close enough to Scappoose. I call myself a Scappoose kid. But the same thing happens in Vernonia, that your residents include folks that live outside of these city limits, that are in your city every day in and out. So I think I totally respect thinking of all of our agencies. You know, you have to put on your council hat, like I have to put on my county hat, I guess, but the better we work together and the more we think of less we think of ourselves in silos, we're all going to be better off working together, especially within our own county.
If I may make a comment, I don't know what the rules are here.
Go ahead.
Are we the city of Vernonia, or are we the community of Vernonia? Because we're stretched out clear to, well, look at our school district. We go clear to Vesper Church, past Burtonville. We turn around at Timber Junction. Are we the community of Vernonia or the city of Vernonia? That's who we're protecting.
And if you don't mind, I appreciate that. And I do consider myself a member of a very wonderful community, but up here we are representing the people within our district, which is specifically within the city limits. And I think that we need to be very cautious when we are making a decision, that we are making a decision based on our role as city councilors, not community councilors.
And that's where Cassie brings up the point that we've got backup. So I think that all correlates.
I appreciate that, Counselor. I think you also represent the county in your position. All the cities within the county are part of the county, and that's something that I think that I take pride in.
I just bring up a question. You're talking about the Nahalem River Valley, there are the 3 zones. I'm curious, just as a voter, does that mean that you would increase patrols out to the Washington County line on 47 and out to the Washington County line on Timber?
Where I wish we didn't have 2 meetings at the same time. There's one right here, so the chair basically could get more specific about that. I think it was logical to try to think of the county in those 3 different areas geographically.
Yeah, I'm just specifically asking those 2 questions, those 2 roads.
That would be better for the sheriff to answer it.
I think it'd be really good for the sheriff to make that clear in their education.
And I would tell you that, again, more deputies available if it's within the county. Yes, they would provide service in that area, whether that's an active area of patrol, it's probably based on calls, would be my assumption. So
And this is, you pointed out, probably a Sheriff Pixley question, but based on number of calls. So that says to me, if there's more calls, for instance, in the Highway 30 corridor, that is pulling away from, even though they're going to be designated ostensibly as part of the Nahalem Valley coverage, they're getting pulled because, and that's just an observation.
that specifically stated that Nahalem Valley is a priority area in a zone, one of 3 zones. So, and I'm taking him for his word on that, and he's put some thought into that. So yes, of course, your populous areas, you're going to get more calls, but this is going to double the amount of capacity we have now to deal with the entire county.
So, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it would have been beneficial from the sheriff if you'd have been a little more specific of how many man hours he's going to dedicate to the valley, because I understand how the call volumes usually shift to officers, to Counselor Wagner's point. But we also talked about having a presence being a value, a big value. And if you're getting drawn over there, then the presence is gone. So, I mean, if he'd had said, Nahalem Valley, there's good money for at least 2 officers over here during a work week. However he staffed that, I think he'd get a little more buy-in from my perspective, because like we said, we had a relationship before and we didn't think it turned out the best for us. So, I mean, and when they wanted more money, it made more sense for us to fund our own officer at that point. And to the point, yeah, this council hasn't been doing resolutions, levies. I think, did you say the council did for the school district?
For the school bond,
School bond.
that was the only voting measure I could find.
And, we don't have, I guess we could vote in favor of that resolution number on the record, I guess. But to the point, I think this is really an individual decision by the voters. I mean, everybody's finances are different. I mean, for me to say, yeah, you should vote for it because I'm sitting comfortable. It's a stretch for some people. It's hard.
I'd say the county's the same in that way. We provide a resolution that's not saying this, every resident has to vote this way. It's saying, hey, our board thinks this is important, as well as the other cities that have passed resolutions. So I can understand that, but it's in my mind, a resolution isn't saying you, the voters, have to do the same. It's saying we're supportive of the county's efforts is the way this is the way I'm looking at this and the way we ask all the cities to support our efforts. Yes, that comes at cost to the entire, all citizens within our county. So I guess that's a way to look at it. I don't think that's the intent.
I don't think anybody's up here questioning that we don't need 7 new officers. I think we all realize we need more police presence, but
I'm hearing loud and clear.
I think,
You want that name.
I think you could have, Sheriff Pixley could have sold us a lot better if he said, yes, you're getting 2 full-time up there. And they only get pulled when they got an emergency, they got to run.
In his defense, I think that's tricky knowing that, and they ask for 35, 40 cents, and where's that line to try to come up with a conservative ask?
Yeah.
And I think you have to be very careful on very specific promises with each area because it's all hands on deck. These things happen all the time when there's a big event somewhere, state police, county, city. So you have to be very careful with very precise promises for, so that part of it.
We all mutual aid, so I mean, we had one here a while back, we had Washington County State Police, everybody dogpiling in here, so we all do that, so. But, on a consistent basis, what the expectation would be.
Well,
I mean, with the rest of them, I think we're sticking our neck out, signing the resolution, but I am support of the levy for you. So we do need, I'll give it another try. Our first go around wasn't that successful, but I'm willing to give this a try to improve our community throughout Columbia County.
Curious why it didn't work the first time. You guys had the contract.
We didn't seem to get the support that we was told we would get.
Again.
And who did you hear that from?
We didn't, there was a timing in the agreement and we never were getting that amount of time because of those polls to other kind of rising to the level calls. So we had a amount that the agreement stated and per week, the goal. And in one of the months we had one time the county sheriff was here in the month of April and we paid for hours every week. And so that was kind of, didn't work for us. Just, I think it's a logistical nightmare to staff deputies where you're hoping or not hoping crime will happen. I think that's very difficult for the sheriff. I think just in a county with as many square miles as we have. So we all had good intentions going into it. It just didn't pan out for when he could release someone to come do patrols here. And when we needed a lot of times, if they could come, it was doubling when we had someone. So it's just hard to logistically meld those two jurisdictions together, is what I'd say.
We also got a few complaints directly from citizens that issues that came up on county time were not handled as responsibly as we would like to see, and that was frustrating. I mean, at the end of the day, we're part of the
county, people in the county?
People in the city, citizens here. But we had times where we were staffed by our own police department and times where we weren't because we were shorthanded at the time. The county was supposed to be our exclusive law enforcement. I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, I'm very tired. Huh?
With the complaint.
Yeah, the complaints. But ultimately, the county should be providing services to us without us having a contract because we are part of the county and we pay taxes. And I think how I felt was that we weren't even getting that amount and yet we were paying an expensive contract for additional. So to ask for something on good faith, because now we're going to deliver more when it hasn't been represented well in the past.
This resolution probably was a little easier for Scappoose and St. Helens and Clascanine because they're right there on the kind of the hub.
Size of Vernonia,
It's a little more difficult for us.
We're having a fairly casual conversation. I appreciate that, at least the back and forth. I will say, we've acknowledged that we do not have enough patrol staffing, and I would say that probably is a good part of why a specific contract with the city, and it was a fairly low-level contract comparatively to just an all-out takeover of a police force like Clascanine, after working that out over some time, that's their preference, is to have the county deputies take on the Clascanine police force. So there was an effort made, but, and a second point I'll make, so for one, I think that shows we don't have enough support, and this doubles the amount that we have available. So that will make a difference. There's a commitment there. And then Mayor Hobart, I appreciate you called me and gave me a heads up the day before the city was deciding to be done with that agreement. But that's something I think we need to improve on as elected officials. I didn't know until it was too late. And that's not your guys' fault. That just shows that the collaboration needs to be better. That's something that we just did our first city county dinner in 3 years. So we went through a couple of years of maybe losing track of how well we communicate with one another. And if some of those things would have been addressed more hands-on as they were happening, it could have been a different scenario, even with the amount of the lack of capacity that we had. But this doubles our capacity, so it does make it a totally different scenario that's an attempt to help provide more position. That's how that works. And we can beat this up. I really appreciate your guys' integration time. I know this isn't easy, and it's not easy for any of the cities that's made this decision. Clascanine and Rainier are the same size as Vernonia when it comes down to it for resources and population.
So trying to move forward with the meeting, I'm going to ask the council to, if you're in favor of signing this resolution into effect to support this levy, you can raise your right hand. I'm going to raise mine. So, nobody else? Okay.
Well, I appreciate the discussion, and I will tell you either way, increase enforcement in your area.
Okay. Thank you, Casey.
Thank you, guys.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Kate.
Okay.
I don't know if it's the discussion, but is it hot in here? I'm sweaty. I'm turning the heat down.
I don't know. I'm cold, tired, and extremely hungry.
Yeah.
Want to take a 5-minute break?
Or at least 2. Well, I need 48
Take-
seconds.
Take a couple minutes.
What's happening right now?
Yeah.
I feel crazy, but I didn't eat. That was a myth.
Well, that went over like a you-know-what in the pool.
Taking back.
Can't say they didn't try. We beat it for
Well,
a while.
I got recorded.
I really appreciate that Casey was here, and I got
Yeah, no.
some insight into what what they're doing. I got hung up with the fire levy and haven't had a chance to really investigate this
Well,
so much.
it's all up to the voters, but,
I didn't know.
you know, resolution is not quite as severe as an ordinance. So, I mean,
Well, you would.
You can't ordain people.
I kind of, I actually kind of changed my mind in this meeting. I'm going to vote.
I had not even looked at how much it is.
I'm gonna have
Not
to have a
Oh,
forest
like or something.
milling
Yeah.
therapies in the
Well,
forest.
I'm
Barely
still-
I've read
I'm still,
part of it. Yes.
but I
From
don't,
the stable.
Yes.
It's not your world of.
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like we're putting our hand on the scale. You know, I mean,
Well, and I haven't seen a lot of reason to give people credit that they listen to.
I know. We
Our minute.
only can do what we can do.
If we release this thing that
Changed
says
mine
we're in
tonight.
favor of it,
Well, and I think
people don't
has
have that
not had the experience we had,
side of
right? With the Would have
dissatisfaction.
been an easier.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
And so,
And
it was easy for scabboos.
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to
Made
give
us-
people all one side. They're either going to do the research to get both, or they're going to have neither, and they can decide based on just their financial means. But,
Yeah, but if they see city
if
council
they were in,
pass resolution to support it and they don't hear the concerns that were raised,
yeah,
part of that discussion,
yeah.
I'm trying to make some notes, but I only have so much room to write about it as well. And I don't know.
Economic development,
Yes.
whatever.
I write it. It takes it into account in these kind of
That they
decisions.
approve that land.
Let me grab Dale's packet.
You know, I mean, logistically, looking at the funding,
Your presentation packet real quick. No, that one.
oh, that one, oh. When you look at the amount of money that this valley is paying for service, there should be at least 2 full-time officers over here. I mean, that's what we're paying for. We don't get it.
Right. Well, they only
Yeah.
have 7 officers.
Well, I know.
Right, we're also paying for having a jail, an operating jail.
Right.
That's part of what we pay.
But, you know,
12.
with all the amount of what we're paying, there isn't 29 cents that's paying for officers now. And I mean, it's almost 200,000, 47J.
So big in there. So much. You
I
couldn't.
mean, that's not 2 officers, but it's dang close.
Yeah.
So surely what we're already paying would cover the difference. That's my thinking.
Yeah.
Creeks and everything.
Probably getting close to 3, but
Not in our code. Well,
at least be 2.
I think that's
But then
like.
they want you to
And again,
reduce the standard.
Correct.
I was just sending
Well,
flags
they're gonna go
up.
to the call again. Well,
I think you motivate people to do.
then that doesn't
Then we're
deter
out.
the bad guys
Then we're out
because there's
in
no
the cold.
presence.
Already passed Cottage Plus, so you can do that.
Timber Road.
Right.
There's a lot of,
Do we have any?
not yet.
Although that time that
Well, it just depends on if
I
someone
don't,
has a land.
fencing out at Quick Trip, the county deputies did show up.
That sounded like fun.
I know you.
They were the only ones.
I
You couldn't
can't
get
do
on
my
the-
hearing aids, so I
you couldn't
couldn't
get
hear
on the W.
What is that thing? Is that a speaker?
It's a microphone.
You hear about that radio?
But this isn't the
I
country.
seem to remember something.
That's so because again.
I have it off. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can you wait after the meeting?
Only got into their sheep fence and got it wrapped around the birds of the corn, and he was just hung out there in the creek. Didn't go anywhere. They snubbed him up.
Oh, yeah. I still have
I cut him loose.
7 o'clock is
We're good.
between work.
In a big hole.
After,
You just
I can.
take us out.
Get in there too close. One thing when it's not moving, but they cut loose and
We wouldn't have been able to pull him around.
Or imagine staying in, I mean, how people do it, staying in their RVs over the winter, you know, and
Yeah. Oh, they're back, sorry.
Why?
We were talking, sorry.
Usually later.
Yeah, we could get some more extended stays through the winters.
well.
But that's the thing, that's the type of,
You could make a payment for that, so, you know, use some of that money to enhance the
park at the lake.
To build a,
But that, so that makes some
Yeah,
sense.
should go.
But if you're turning all the stuff into manufactured housing and trailer parks and RV, and that's how you're going to get your additional 40 permanent homes in the community, I got some problems with that. There we go.
okay.
Okay, ready, Stephanie?
You've been on this one.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. Any business from the departments tonight? None. Ordinances and resolutions, ordinance 938, amending ordinance 880, city committee powers and duties, 26 through 35.
I brought this to you with the changes you requested. I did make a couple little adjustments because it hasn't been updated in so long. We don't have, an economic development committee. It's not the finance audit committee, it's the budget committee. So just some of those little changes. And then also we don't record the committee meetings anymore. So I took that out. There's a couple little things in there that you'll see, but it's not anything major.
Susan?
I just realized you've got, and maybe you already thought about this, on page 28, section 7, quorum. It specifies 4 members of the committee constitute a quorum.
That's what that is.
Okay.
4 out of 7.
1 over half.
It's more than half, not 1 more than half.
Oh, it's just,
Then it's
More than
5.
oh, okay.
So
More than half.
I thought planning commission,
This is not for planning commission,
okay, it's only committees.
committee.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, that was what my concern was. Okay.
Yeah, they actually formally lowered their number.
Correct.
Yeah. The rest of the actual committees have 7 spots to fill.
Had one.
Go ahead, Dale.
So we're striking out emergency preparedness.
Yeah, because we don't actually have a committee. The city staff participates with the Columbia County Emergency Preparedness Committees as
Okay.
staff.
So we would never have that again.
Not in the same way as we did it here. We may have citizen members that are part and parcel to what we're doing at emergency management with those employees, but never a committee of 7 kind of working on their own things the way parks or the other ones do.
Just wanted to make sure
Yeah.
we're striking something on it.
No, we still like pull in the citizen that does ham radio to our bigger things, but it's not a committee of the city the way it was before.
All right. Blow up on that one.
Any other questions or discussion? Anyone like to make a motion to accept ordinance number 938?
It'd be a motion to
Amen.
have the first reading of ordinance number 880 performed.
Correct.
What she said.
Is there a second?
Go ahead.
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Ash. Call the roll, please, Stephanie.
Counselor Webb?
Aye.
Counselor Ash?
Aye.
Counselor Wagner?
Aye.
Counselor- Mayor Hobart?
Aye.
Counselor Norman?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay.
Okay, would any counselor or mayor like this ordinance read in full? Hearing no such request, this is the first reading of ordinance number 880 as read by title only. It's an ordinance establishing the organization, oh, sorry, crap, wrong one. Let me go back a page. Of ordinance number 938.
Wondering, yeah.
An ordinance amending ordinance 880, an ordinance establishing the organization of all city committees and prescribing the general powers and duties thereof. So because this is unanimous, if you guys would like, we can also have the second reading tonight and we won't have to do this again.
Please.
If you want to call for a motion to formally adopt the ordinance as titled and read by title, you could do that.
What she said.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Counselor Webb. Would you call a roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Norman,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Counselor Wagner,
Aye.
Counselor Ash,
Aye.
Counselor Webb.
Aye.
Motion carried. This is the second reading of ordinance number 938, an ordinance amending ordinance 880, an ordinance establishing the organization of all city committees and prescribing the general powers and duties thereof. This ordinance will be in effect in 30 days.
30 days.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good work, Stephanie. Okay, ordinance number 939, amending the urban growth boundary.
So this is exactly as you guys saw it during the public hearing. There will be one edit on page 2, which is page 37. It's just a clerical error. It should say properties withdrawn from the urban growth boundary, not property. It's the only
Boundary.
Little scribble.
See, Matt Straight didn't make it tonight.
We'll call him if you pass it.
Any discussion or questions on this ordinance number 939?
Just thank you to everybody involved, because this
Yeah.
has been a very long time coming.
Yeah.
What, before my days on the planning commission. So good job.
And just for the people that oppose this, it's an awkward position when we get to the hearing part and there hasn't been public participation up till then. And for they understand, we did hear them, we understand their concerns. But most of the concerns we've already fleshed out. So it makes it kind of hard for us to, gives the impression that we didn't listen to them. But I think if they understood where we were at, they would know why we're voting for this.
And yeah, thank you, Dale. I'd like to make a comment on the public hearing. It was one of the better public hearings I was involved in. I was really proud to be not only sitting here to be a part of Vernonia, because we actually made history, if you think about it. And there was great participation from the community. There was let's see, 2 realtors, paramedic, a lineman, the whole planning commission, the entire city council. Great participation, great concerns, great questions from the community. I think Josette did a great job in answering a majority of those questions. I think after during the hearing, everyone that walked out here had more questions answered and felt a little bit better about it and understood it more. And so I just thought it was one of our better nights myself. And of course, the planning or the engineers were there also, did a good job. So, yeah, I look at it for preparing for the future, and I think it was a job well done. With that being said,
I move we adopt ordinance number 939, an ordinance of the city of Vernonia amending the urban growth boundary
I'll second that.
Perform the first reading.
and perform the first reading of.
and the motion's been made and seconded. My Counselor Ash, would you call the roll, please, Stephanie?
Counselor Webb.
Aye.
Counselor Ash.
Aye.
Aye.
Counselor Wagner.
Aye.
Mayor Hobart.
Aye.
Motion carried. This is the first reading of ordinance number 939, as read by title only, an ordinance of the city of Vernonia amending the urban growth boundary. So if you want, you can do the second reading tonight.
We're on a roll.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Why not?
Then you'll need another
So
motion.
we need,
Yeah.
I'll move that we
Understood.
do the second reading and approve the ordinance this evening.
Second.
Okay, would you call the roll, please? Sarah?
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Counselor Normand,
Nay.
Counselor Wagner,
Aye.
Counselor Ash,
Aye.
Counselor Webb.
Aye.
Motion carried. Let me make sure real quick I'm following my procedures right.
yeah. I don't know if it's on the first or second one, as it matters.
I think I know where I got confused because you asked if you wanted to do the entire reading. That's why I said no. Correct.
Nobody wants that read.
You knew it was coming.
She asked about this.
Everybody was making fun of me.
Just to make sure we're not gonna have any issues, I will go ahead and bring this back to the next council meeting.
Thank you.
It seems like it's okay, but I'm, just to make sure we're on the up and up, I'll bring it to the next one.
If there's not a unanimous vote.
I
Well,
don't know if that means you can't go to the second one or it can be the second one, but yeah, we'll figure it out. Yeah. We'll bring it back just because, right?
okay. Sorry about that.
Oh, it's fine. I just want to make sure that we're.
We just want to make them actually adopt it, right?
Okay, moving on. Ordinance number 940, amending ordinance 914, regulating smoking in parks.
Get back there.
80, page 82.
Okay, this ordinance is also exactly how you guys had it last time, with the exception of the two requested changes you had, which was to make sure that all references to devices were changed to systems. And then removal of the sign. Yeah, which is under section.
Yeah, it's,
Page 85, section 4,
Oh, yeah.
item 1.
So that's the only change.
And there's an includes but is not limited
Oh, yes. Yeah, that is in there.
under section 1, item 7. So all the blue.
Oh, yeah. Good catch.
And Parks Committee, they've reviewed this, the changes.
well, it's theirs except for we did not hone us in on specific language in the signs. We didn't want it written into the ordinance if it didn't match what we wanted to put there. And then Susan wanted in the list of items for it to say including but not limited to in case there isn't an item listed. And then the last one was changing, some of the original draft had device instead of systems, delivery systems. So we just changed all the device to delivery systems.
Sounds good, yeah. We did have, because a number of us were saying.
Go for it. I'm not trying it because I get yelled at every time.
I'll do it.
By who?
I'll move that we approve ordinance number 940, an ordinance amending ordinance 914, an ordinance regulating smoking and inhalant delivery devices in the city of Vernonia Parks, and have the first reading.
So moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Wagner. Call the roll, please, Stephanie.
Counselor Webb,
Aye.
Counselor Norman,
Okay.
Counselor Wagner,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
Counselor Ash,
Aye.
motion carried. Would any counselor wish to have this ordinance read in full?
No.
Hearing no such request. The first reading is ordinance number 940 by title only, an ordinance amending ordinance 914, an ordinance regulating smoking and inhalant delivery devices in the city of Vernonia Parks. I will bring this back at the next council meeting for the second reading.
Okay. Thank you. Resolution 2023-03, updating the library handbook.
Aye.
Good night.
Night, thank
Night.
you.
Thank you, guys. Now I can go have a cigarette.
Have a cigarette.
Just kidding.
50 feet.
Stay in your own car, Jana.
Rent a campsite.
So these are two policies that, in reviewing what the state wants the library board to have in their collection policy, and then the confidentiality policy. So the library board worked on these. Who's library board liaison? Is it you, Rick?
I was, but
It's me
Susan.
and I-
Didn't, okay. I didn't know if the liaison was part of the discussions and collaboration about amending these pages to the handbook.
There's no red line.
No,
No.
they're brand new.
New.
New sections that the state wanted the board to do
New
it.
handbook.
Got it. Great. Love that.
So, any questions or discussions on the library, new library handbook?
Misspellings?
Where, yes.
So removal criteria item 4 is superseded. I believe the second S should be a C, no? That's not a word?
I'd have to Google it.
Yeah, my phone's dead, or I would have, or
Page 89,
put it in my mouth, but I'm pretty sure. Is
Superseded.
88. Removal items?
No, it's correct.
it?
Okay.
correct?
Okay.
Sorry.
Superseded. She was just making sure it shouldn't be CEDED.
I believe it's correct.
C instead of that.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Right, according to my computer.
Yeah, it is.
Correct.
It's SEDED.
Okay.
Huh.
Learn something every day.
Well, looks pretty good to me. Anyone like to make a motion to accept this resolution?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Mayor. We
Okay.
adopt resolution number 2023-03, a resolution amending resolution 15-18, a resolution adopting a library policies handbook.
Second?
And seconded by Counselor Norman. You call the roll, please, Stephanie.
Counselor Norman,
Aye.
Counselor Wagner,
Aye.
Counselor Webb,
Aye.
Counselor Ash,
Aye.
Mayor Hobart,
Aye.
motion carried.
Thank you. Correspondence, letter from Habitat for Humanity.
Wake up, it's finally your time.
Hello, everyone.
You've been really patient.
Oh, that's all right. I have patience. I'm Mike Stone. I'm a home builder in the county and also volunteer for Habitat for the last 10 years. Built multiple homes, but we've never built anything in Vernonia.
Really?
So here we are. Let's let you guys pass these out. I got this wonderful letter.
Yeah.
Oh, y'all have the letter. Okay, here's some more plans, some newsletters. You can look at those. About 4 years ago, we bought a lot up here on 6th Street from Community Action Team. And we decided we were going to build a home on it. We're going to build a 2-story basement, living space in the basement, and then a room upstairs for a handicapped adult child, for a single mother with an adult handicapped child. And we're all volunteers, pretty much. We get our money from our restore, where people donate things and we generate money from that. And then we actually sell the home to the family at a 0% interest or close to it for a long period of time, whatever they can afford. And it's just a great program. I've really enjoyed it over the last 10 years. And here we are. But what we'd like to do, we're just about ready to get our permits from the city. And I'd like to have you guys, if you can, waive the sidewalk fee. That's about it.
Mike, how many homes have you built for Habitat in 10 years?
This will be my 9th one.
9th home.
But of course, we went through COVID.
Yeah.
And we're all volunteers pretty much. So I've been a home builder for 44 years, but, and so I oversee the building of them, but I can't spend every day. I have a good group of guys that like to putter or get together and drink coffee and tell stories. So,
Yeah.
So it's worked out good. Up here, I do have, Kimberly Norman that's going to oversee the project.
Oh.
And hopefully we can drag people from up here to get involved in it, because it's, a distance for me to drive up here. And I think we can do that. It seems like we had out here at your, what do you call it, Timber Days or whatever it was, we had a booth there. And it seemed like there was a lot of people interested in helping us get through this project. Starting out with the foundation, it's going to be an ICF type of foundation, which is insulated concrete forms. So they're like Lego blocks.
Yeah.
And so I think that'll be kind of fun for the group. I believe you have a construction class at the high school. Someone was telling me.
Oh, wow.
Maybe we could get them involved in it too.
That'd be neat.
To do something at that phase. I know that we can't have people under 18 working on the project, but I believe the high school would probably have an insurance policy that would cover.
Yeah,
kids.
we're checking with them.
Yeah.
So, Mike,
Yes.
so I'm trying to think where that lot, it's up on 6th.
It's right next to, well, it used to be Row Diggers lived there, and the house on the corner of Bridge. It's the one empty lot.
Is it a corner lot?
No, it's right across from Shirley Daughtry's on 6th.
Shirley's that one last
Yeah.
one there. So we're only talking the sidewalk on just a 50 foot.
It's 50 foot.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't know the struggles most of this council's had over this sidewalk issue. That's kind of a tough one for me. We're getting where we're making with compliance, or we're receiving the fee to put it in.
Right.
And So
And I don't know what the fee is exactly.
the fee in lieu, but it's more than what it would cost you to construct it yourself. And if you got a good flat grade there and volunteers,
Yeah.
they pop it in.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I mean, if,
You don't have to pay.
They chose to request the fee. They chose to request the fee, not to put it in.
Okay.
And
And I think you might want to, my opinion, you might want to, I mean, maybe the other council will.
right.
I would reconsider that and the volunteers.
Yeah.
Part of it's going to be concrete apron anyhow for drive,
Oh,
right?
yes.
So
Yeah.
sidewalk isn't.
And we've been doing concrete driveways. The house that we just dedicated 2 weeks ago, we did concrete driveway on that just because it was cheaper to do concrete rather than do a little concrete apron and rest of it in blacktop.
Yeah.
And then the deer walk through it.
So you have an option there. You can
Yes.
just do it.
Yeah,
Not that you, and there's no fee involved then.
right. And I would be all for that. I mean, I would bet it would be less expensive for us to do that.
3 years,
So I can, what's that?
3 years ago, we probably would have issued you a waiver.
Mhm.
Yeah, so the tricky part is that they just instituted this fee. So if you did waive it, then you're kind of setting a precedent. And then where do you, what happens when the next person comes in?
Yeah.
Even though it's a habitat house,
Right.
we all get. But I almost think we could get freewheelers or somebody like that to put it in.
But even if, as long as we know what the established grade is going to be, because everything's got to match up to it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think, but what I'm saying is we have concrete guys that do that for a living and have done a number of, like, they did the whole patio and curb in front of the food bank. And
Right.
they kind of like that kind of project. So if we talked with them right now, we could probably figure out.
And I get a discount on the concrete from Cal Portland. too.
Yeah.
So for habitat.
Yeah. I know when Jennifer came and wanted SDCs, we were like, oh, we can't set the precedent. It's
Yeah.
hard for a small town because the next person's going to go point to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I can see that. So, but I didn't realize that we had that option to put it in ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
I thought we were just, and she applied for the permits. Obviously, I wasn't involved in that, but
Yeah, and I think that can just be come in and amend their permit and provide the plans of what they want to do, put in, right?
yeah, we have I'll get your information.
Okay.
Can you write down your email on there?
I'll put my
Put
email
your
on.
email there and I'll shoot you an email tomorrow on how to do that.
Good.
So.
Good.
We'll plant the bug in some volunteers' ears that are concrete
Yeah.
people.
Well, that's what we need.
Yeah, I'll be like, hey, we talked about you at the council meeting last night.
No, that's how we function
Yeah,
as volunteers. So.
yeah.
No problem.
Okay.
Donald, did you have something?
Well, I was going to say, I'm behind Dale. We've fought such a hard battle to make people put sidewalks in that it would be cheaper to do it than it would be to pay the fee in lieu.
Right.
So
Right. I can do it pretty.
we're kind of stuck right there. It's got to go one way or the other. And for us to waive it would not go well with a bunch of people.
Right. Right. Now, is it sidewalk or is it curb and gutter and?
It's all of it, sidewalk, curb and gutter.
Okay.
You don't have to do the asphalt because the asphalt exists
Right.
and is in good condition. Stretch.
Yeah,
It'll probably be real good next year.
Yeah.
right, right.
Oh, is it?
That street pie going to get paid.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
it's resurfacing, yeah.
Okay. Right.
And I don't know if you know, but Counselor Norman's daughter is your
That's what I was.
Yeah.
Well, I've met her a couple of times. So
Yeah.
down when we were working on the one in St. Helens, and she was doing a big pour there at that new apartment complex.
Yeah.
Good.
Oh.
So we'll get you some volunteers ready to help.
Yeah, good. Good. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you for what you're doing for humanity too.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I've enjoyed building it.
Yeah.
I just can't seem to.
Bless you, bless you.
Invitation from Camp Cedar Ridge.
Yeah, so I received a call from Cedar Ridge. One, they were worried about the post they saw on Facebook where the county was going to use parks as homeless camps or
Including Cedar Ridge.
including Cedar Ridge is what they were worried about it. I'm like, you're private property. That's not happening. But you wanted everyone to be invited to their birthday celebration. It's been their 1 year. They're celebrating it on May 20th at 1 p.m. And come celebrate with them and have some birthday cake. She wanted me to make sure council knew they were invited.
Excellent. Thank you.
Very good.
Mayor?
Yes.
Can I just address that real quick?
Yeah.
I was just up there this last week talking with Casey Wilson, who's the executive director and manager of the camp. And I do think that they're also going to be doing some tours of the camp, which might be kind of fun to see some of the things they're doing. They have a lot going on. There will be a big article in this next issue of The Voice on Thursday about kind of an update on where they are and pushing this party. What's happening and he's invited, but pick up a copy of The Voice and read a little more about it. But I think it's going to be kind of fun for people to see what's going on up there. A little different if you haven't been up there for a while. And a lot of people have spent a lot of time up there over the years, but I kind of like what they're doing. We really want to reach out to the community and be involved with the community. They're having a Mother's Day brunch or buffet or something up there on Mother's Day as well. That is, they're inviting the community to come and have food there. And apparently their food is really good. That's a real priority of theirs. It's good food, and there's vegan and vegetarian and gluten-free options that they always consider. So it's a pretty good thing. So thanks. Just love it.
Thank you.
Be a little bit more.
Okay, city administrator report.
Okay, so the grandstands. The electrical's been relocated. We're repurposing the platform next week. Public Works had a little more dialing in to do of their trench because it's settled. So they need to top it off, bring in some gravel, make it really nice. Because once we put that platform in, we won't on that end of the building, won't be able to do any grading there. The fence, we're going to have a temporary rent-a-fence for security around the grandstands, starting around May 15th. And then once the fence is up, we're going to remove the logger. We're going to just cut right through the supports because we don't want to try and piecemeal them off of the different plywood. He might not make it. And then former Counselor Allen is doing the grade all and coming out with the scaffolding company to hold up the structure while they remove their asset. And then he thought perhaps the roof could come down that day because we know there's kind of a lack of support on the one side. So potentially we won't be having someone remove a standing structure. They would be removing kind of a pile, basically, depending on how it goes down. Once he does that, then I'll get the 3 bids. If those, and next meeting, I'm going to be bringing you guys what remains in ARPA, where we had talked about slating it so you can see if that's a funding source you want to use. The other alternative is if the roof is down, we do have people that would volunteer if the city rented equipment to volunteer to crunch it up and put it into dumpsters for us, if that's a cost-saving measure that we're interested in. So we can get bids, and then if they're all kind of astronomical or something we can't afford, then we can look at doing more of a grassroots effort like we did with the skate park, where we kind of had locals that were willing to do that. So that's where we're at with grandstands. I'm still waiting. We have not had another follow-up meeting. They're looking at testing at the end of May or early June of the well up at Odoms so that we can move forward. And if it qualifies for the criteria as an orphan site for fixing. I'm working on, and I now have a login and all the preliminary stuff into the system with ODF and W for the restoration and enhancement grant. In addition to that, just for your knowledge, this Saturday is Family Fishing Day. It's not free. So if you do need a license, if you're over 12, you will need a license, but they will be there with fishing poles and education and all the kind of stuff. They'll be right kind of in front of Susie's, right on the trail's edge in front of Susie's campsite. And then I'll be bringing to you the application and formally getting council's blessing on applying for that money in June. The lake restroom restoration project is going along great. When we removed the toilets, though, we found after 20 years, the flange was wiggly and cracked. And so 5-Star Plumbing is coming in tomorrow to remove those and install new flanges so that when we put them back, they're good for another 20 years. We don't have to worry about it. And then we're just going to be waiting on partitions, and the flooring company is coming next Tuesday. So flanges get fixed this Tuesday. Next Tuesday, Webfoot comes and does their new flooring and cove molding in there. They've already been painted and all the stuff. We've got new paper towel holders and new toilet paper holders because those ones in there were kind of the old product we used to use, and one of them was, and so we're kind of leaving it all fresh. So the inside should be done by the end of this month. And then I told Mitch, because he's currently trying to do all the cemetery tasks, that June could be his roof month. Like, that's fine. He's going to fix the punky plywood, put the new facade board on there, new flashing, and that will, the exterior stuff will happen in June. The electrical projects still on the electrician's list are the lighting of the entrance sign, the lighting at the picnic shelter at Spencer, and then the electrical plugs for the cameras from GorgeNet. So I left a message for him today asking for ETAs on all those. He hasn't gotten back to me. He may have. I didn't check my messages this evening. We are officially a storm-ready city. We passed. We're now a storm-ready city. Now they will commission the sign, and then we'll have to have an unveiling. So that was good. I got an email on that.
Still
Tomorrow I won't be in the office. Iwalani and I are attending the mass care exercise. So basically emergency management's coordinating with another agency that's running kind of a mass care where we say, this happened in Vernonia. Now what are you going to do? Kind of a practice. And that's happening in St. Helens at their behind Walmart, where the Tower of Power is. It's the Connex building tower that emergency management has. Iwalani's still trying to get me to put one of those in Vernonia. We don't need a Tower of Power, but that's where we'll be tomorrow. And then we have the first city budget meeting tomorrow, and that will be at the Flex Room, the Birkenfeld Room at the Senior Center.
Okay.
We're going to have all our budget meetings there because the cabin is doing so great with rentals. So we don't want to, no upheaval over there. And then, yeah, we just have the other council meeting and other meetings. Do you guys have questions for me?
We expect a fourth budget meeting, correct? 'Cause-
Yes, I didn't put all the futures. I just went the month. Yeah.
So it would still be,
Oh, there is May. I didn't want to make you a running.
Hey, there's one.
making sure.
Yeah.
The response from the fire department about burning, how was that?
So Rob did not want to do it. He said the transformer's too close, there's a lack of educational opportunity, and they're concerned about community backlash for being the ones that take it down. That's what he said at the board meeting. So, and he had told me ahead of time, we can't do it.
He come off a little grumpy about it was what concerned me.
He did?
Yes,
Oh, I wasn't there. That's just what,
we're not gonna do that.
oh, yeah.
I mean, yes, personally, it didn't settle with me.
Yeah.
That's not people working together.
No. And I don't know that it was kind of the shifts up there that had him stressed or whatever, but his email was Kurt also, but if they don't want to do it, they don't.
I spoke to him directly about it at the last prior town hall, before the last council meeting, and he was not that way. He just took his time to explain it pretty well. So I don't know if he had other things happening or if maybe he got tired of being asked that question. But
Well, he just brought it up, and when he told it to the board members was pretty outspoken, which I felt wasn't
Yeah,
necessary or.
I don't know.
You have a lot on his plate that.
Yeah.
Well, it was like their board meeting, a budget meeting and a there was multiple meetings. It was like,
And executive session.
that's,
You know what?
Yeah, but I still think it was uncalled for the way he described it.
Anything else?
So
Yeah.
waiving the parking fees.
oh, I'm sorry, yes. We're waiving the lake parking fee just for the timing of the event. I'm gonna have a sign and Susie's gonna hang it up around 9:45 till 2 o'clock, and then she's gonna take it down.
Yeah.
To kind of promote families that, might not show up because that might be trouble, to come down and do some fishing.
That's cool.
So on the lake docks, so I know we were talking about going all aluminum frame. Is somebody going to work us up some pricing or?
Yeah, so actually Ron Wren from ODF and W, he gave me the name of a couple firms. They did just do a aluminum frame one. It was actually the firm that did the diving. That same firm just built one, and I forget the town he said, because it wasn't something that resonated with me, but they just put an aluminum based one in with the grading. And I said, well, our goal is to maybe reuse the handrail, just get the base the exact same dimension with new floats, aluminum with grading on top, reuse our own handrail. The ramps will already be sufficient because we'll have the grading on those. And he's like, oh yeah, that firm. He said, go to them and see what they'll do. Because I told him Topper had, when we asked, had bid us wood construction again. I'm like, you guys don't like pressure treated. You don't like all these things about it. And it starts decaying the minute we put it on the water. And he's like, oh no, I know that other firm has just done the aluminum version. So.
Because and I think we talked about this when we went and fixed that west dock a week or so ago.
Yeah,
I got it kind of pulled back. It's not really right yet, but needs fine tuned with the chains to get it positioned right. But at least we got the one end anchored again. But when we pulled the boards, the deck boards look kind of rough. We replace them as needed, but when you look inside that thing, it does not look bad.
No, I know.
I mean, and Mitch and I, we even poked around with, knife and screwdriver, and the frame doesn't look bad. But what is bad is the anchor chains.
Yeah.
So if we don't get the bid, if we don't get the grant for new docks, we're going to have to probably get somebody in there to put new chains in.
Okay.
Because we're going to have docks taken off on us because there was nothing. I mean, it was weird. You get down about 1.5 feet in the water and the chain looked pretty normal. But that top 1.5 feet, it would swell up about twice the diameter, but it was just iron oxide. And then when you broke that off, there'd be just a little sliver of metal in it. And it was spooky looking. We're like, oh, they're all going to need fixed. But, I wish that diver, I don't know what the anchor looks like down there.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So anyhow, that's just something that we're going to have to put on our plate.
Or even in the short term, depending on when their funding comes down, we may have to do something.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get new ones. We'll just.
Well, or maybe we chain them off in with a new chain. Just don't mess with the old. drop some just to, yeah.
I don't think it'd be a big deal.
No.
big expense, but-
No.
I mean, I hate to put new chains on an old dock, but
Yeah,
we're gonna have to if we got new docks.
right.
And then just want to keep reminding you on the DEQ decommissioning on the old dump up there to keep, when is it going to be
For logging?
for logging?
Okay.
Yeah, is it appropriate?
Yep.
Because we need to kind of keep that on the front burner here the next couple of years, get that done in there before the trees down below grow too much.
Are you saying when it will be allowed by DEQ to be logged?
Yeah. Like, will logging trigger something is what?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we don't want it, we want to do it when it will be okay. Yeah, got it.
Just want to make sure I'm writing it down right.
Yeah.
Josette, I heard the paving machine at the lake ran out of paper over the weekend.
Yeah.
Is there any, so did we lose some business
Yes.
there? Or?
Well, so Suzie took her first vacation on a weekend in 2 years. Well, and longer than 2 years. How many years? 4 years. 3.5 years.
Okay.
And so she had prepped everything and stocked everything ahead of leaving on Friday. It just had a lot of sales. And so it ran out.
Oh.
And David was up, texting me, calling me, and I'm like, David, it's 1:00 on Sunday. Those people just tell them it's your lucky day, because otherwise to change the paper, we're doing a call out. And I didn't foresee us, the call out cost versus what we were going to lose in $5 fees. I said it was okay.
Do we have to replenish that every so?
Yeah, it's just like it's a roll.
Just a roll?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Usually starts getting red at the end of the
Yeah.
day. I don't know last time it didn't. I think it was Jeff that came and changed it, because I said, normally it lets me know. And
Yeah.
I said, yeah, there wasn't any at the end.
Well, and I told them, just train me and give me a key. And then if someone texts me, I can run down and put a new roll in. But I don't know how to do it. So once I know how to do it, I won't have a problem just popping down there and fixing it. But I didn't want to pay someone for me, it's nothing, right? I mean, for my cost, I'm not any more cost, right? Just go do it. So.
Okay. Do we have a new host out at Airport Park?
We do.
Yeah.
So they were the same people that were the tenants. Mary and Tracy is the husband's name. And they were park host up at Stewart for 3 years. I had a little bit of concern and had a really frank discussion with them about the workload and whether or not they could perform it. We went through all the tasks, and they were like, oh yeah, we braked out
there, and he was mowing.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So.
Yeah. I think they're going to work out good. Yeah.
And I talked to you about when I did drive through Anderson Park last week, how
overgrown. Yeah.
And a lot of debris on the shelter roof, and the gutters need cleaned, and the grass is getting high. So, and you assured me that you had somebody.
We have a new, so when Dory became a solo park host, she's not able to do the landscaping.
Right.
So we changed the percentage that she got, because she gets her site and then the percentage to do the restrooms. Because I said I needed the other percentage to pay someone to do landscaping. And there is an extended stay worker there that expressed interest, and he works for Intel as a welder. And he's like, came in, we had a discussion, and he was really interested. He's like, oh yeah, I could easily mow and weed whack it for the percentage that was left. And then it looks like Dory may be at some point leaving us as park hosts, changing her situation. And him and his wife would be really interested in taking over park host. And they thought this would be a good way to kind of show what they're willing to do for the 6% that was available. And so if you drive through there, it should be, he was gung ho on Friday to get on the mower. So it may already be all dealt with. We will be having Tim and Mitch though do the roof
Okay,
of the picnic shelter with the boom truck and safety
Yeah.
and all that. But yeah, it should look a lot better now.
good.
I just have to dawn me, like, if I am gone, what about having like one of the other parcos come down and like check on the garbage or check the restrooms on?
Yeah, we easily could do that.
Because that way they're already a volunteer, they would just be coming in.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. That'd be an easy thing. Yeah.
I think that would be.
Because one of the other things is it ran out of paper and one of the garbage cans just kept overflowing. Nobody, like, everyone just kept sticking stuff even if it wasn't sticking in there, but yeah, that'd be a good idea. Just kind of.
Big blocks, I guess, and I've noticed like a lot of times if there's big stuff, I'll just pull it out.
Well, and I think we could kind of job share, right? If they're going on vacation, one of you could go check their thing too.
Yeah.
All the parkos, the 3 parkos. Yeah. We'll talk about that.
Okay. Any other thing for the CA?
Any ETA and digging out the pump?
No, Robert, I thought Robert said he was doing it last week. I'll get him on him. He's been busy over here taking down that house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He's about done.
it's looking pretty good, actually.
One up here?
Yeah, on Rose.
One of Rose, yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
You have what? Well, I guess information. I did look at the welcome to Vernonia sign.
Yes,
The signage, I think we can save.
the
Right.
back part. Okay.
The logs, they're all gone.
That's what I
They're
said.
gone.
Yeah.
But I think a person could take like a die grinder and grind the heads off the nails and then pull the signage off so you're not trying to rip the nails out and break.
Through it. Okay. So you guys kind of wanted to look at it and then have a discussion. Do you want to just put that on your next agenda to discuss whether or not you want to replicate that again, whether you want to go forward with the other idea?
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks, Don.
You're welcome.
I had my idea that was the case. Okay, any other items? Okay, thank you, Josette. Any items from the councilors?
The trees are starting to busting.
Yeah, good.
All the new trees. Just walked through today. They need it. It's been a rough winter. It looks
Yeah.
like.
A lot of wet weather and frozen and, well,
Yeah. This weather's perfect, so.
Thank you, Dale. I don't have anything. So well, I guess we're ready for an action item summary.
okay. So staff's going to bring back ordinance 939 to the May 15th meeting. We're also going to bring back ordinance 940 to the May 15th meeting. Double check with the DEQ about the logging and will it be an issue of decommissioning, and re-up with Robert Watts and ETA and the pump dig out like tomorrow. And put the entrance sign discussion on your May 15th agenda.
Anything else we need to add to the next council meeting? Okay, well, we'll see everyone tomorrow at 6:30 at the senior center in the Burkettfield room.
One thing, we're trying to reuse your binders. So if you have your binder, we're going to give you a new cover sheet and I don't know if Angie requested that.
I've got a couple white books.
Yeah, we just have one new member. So if everyone else could bring their original binder, or if you don't have one, let me know and I can bring an extra too, but.
Just pass the levy.
Yeah.
What?
Can't afford binders? I'm kidding.
Let's have a resolution for that.
Oh, okay.
Did you have something, Susan?
Are those, it's just the old ones that you made, right?
No, you'll probably get a new one.
Okay.
Because you haven't had,
The white.
they have a pocket in the front. They're fancier.
Just the white
White notebook.
The ones before were from my dad's business and we contact papered over.
I still have a handful of those.
Are we adjourned?
No.
Oh.
Do we need a resolution to adjourn? Meeting adjourned at 9:45.